The Justice League, maybe the greatest group of heroes in all of fiction, comprises super space aliens, goddesses, speedsters, and geniuses alike, versus the Z-Fighters, or Dragon Team, a group of warriors spearheaded by a few monkeys from the destroyed world, a handful of Earthlings and a Namek, who have all consistently broken past their limits and climbed through the universe's totem pole while on their path to self-mastery. Since I already made 2 ranking videos detailing the scaling of DC's definitive leaders, I thought it was about time to expand my video catalog into the world of Dragon Ball, and determine which group would win off the countless statements, guides, skills, and feats of both respective verses. I'm not going to try to make this easier on myself and exclude certain versions of these characters. This video will be an amalgamation of each era of Dragon Ball in DC that will pretty much be organized into multiple rounds. Round 1 being the OG era of Dragon Team versus the Golden Age's Justice League, followed by the Z-Fighters during the age of Dragon Ball Z versus the Core 7 of the Silver Ages, after which will be GT vs Post Crisis, and finally Heroes vs Infinite Frontiers. Now that I finally laid out the gauntlet, follow me to the beginning of Goku's journey. Goku at the very beginning of his journey with Bulma in the OG era of Dragon Ball was more or less a superhuman. Even before he underwent his training with Roshi, which is a power level 10, he was shown being capable of lifting vehicles that weigh over a ton, taking gunshots to the head at point blank ranges, and combating and enduring attacks from Yamcha, whose Wolf Fang Fist technique could send Goku flying through multiple stone pillars, which would yield building levels of energy. After this, Goku would eventually run into and train with Krillin, under Master Roshi, a man renowned as the Heavenly Martial Arts Master, with centuries upon centuries of experience, someone who was literally taught by the god of martial arts in Korin, and he literally took one look at Goku and Krillin and came to the conclusion that they had no lack of skill, only lacking true lessons of humility and strength to a degree. This is further backed by not only the methods of training Roshi used, but by the fact that both Goku and Krillin could go blow for blow and skill for skill against Roshi, while he was under his disguise as Jackie Chun. Moreover, while we're still on the topic of Roshi's fight with Goku, we see him perform one of the most known and craziest displays of power in Dragon Ball at the time, with the destruction of the moon, a feat that would require excess of 29.6 exatons of energy, or moon levels amounts of energy at a low ball, but can be calced further, if certain guides are ignored, to the planetary level ranges via the violent fragmentation of the moon. Nonetheless, bringing this feat up is really important because Jackie Chun beat Goku and Krillin, so in a way, his max power Kamehameha served as the benchmark of power that Goku and his now rival Krillin would soon aspire to reach and later surpass. This brings us to the events of the 22nd World Tournament arc, where we see many characters do exactly that. Enter Tien Shenhan, the strongest student of the Crane School and rival of Goku, who was shown fighting against a stronger version of his sensei's mortal rival, who had been secretly training since the 21st tournament and increased his power level to 139. Tien was, for the lack of better words, stronger than Roshi, who conceded his fight against Tien and realized that the next generation is more than capable of carrying the torch. Tien literally retired the man. This would pretty much piggyback scale Goku, Yamcha, and Krillin to the moon level ranges as well, since Yamcha could go at it in his fight with Tien before having his leg broken by the Triclops, while being stated to have power that rivals Krillin, well, by Krillin. During his viewing of Goku and Krillin's match, Roshi legitimately speculates that Goku might have surpassed his maximum power already, and would later have his hypothesis confirmed after witnessing the level of power and techniques that were employed during Goku and Tien's match, and by official materials that puts both of their power levels at 180. Soon after narrowly losing another World Tournament finale, this time via a ring out against Tien, we see Goku fight against his 2 greatest adversaries in the OG series, that being King Piccolo and his children. Threats that would at this point serve as the toughest challenges yet for the Dragon Team. Tambourine sent Krillin to an early grave. Master Roshi gave his all against a washed King Piccolo, but it wasn't enough. Drum bodied Tien after he trained his heart out, and even Goku wasn't enough at first. But after going through some training gains and drinking divine water, Goku would beat all of them. He destroyed Tambourine, KO'd Drum, and through a hard-fought battle, beat the great King Piccolo on his own day in the most disrespectful manner possible, causing the Demon King to come to the conclusion that his performance was unacceptable, and spin the block back through his reincarnation, Piccolo Jr., who completely flipped his prior self and stated that he could kill the entirety of the Dragon Team, who at that time ramped up their training under Korin after the King Piccolo arc, and the God of Earth and Kami, while having less than 50% of his power, which is actually insane when you realize that Kami could flick away a pre-time skip Goku, who was a King Piccolo level threat in power and skill. After his time skip training with Kami and Popo, Goku would return, completely lapping and surpassing his past self in power and skill, while fighting in arguably his toughest battle ever, relatively speaking, against Piccolo, where he would eventually beat him as well. So now that we got the strength and skill breakdown out the way, let's foray into speed, a department wherein the Dragon Team has a strong case for being faster than light. We see Goku outright perform an FTL feat in his fight against Tien, through him grabbing Roshi's sunglasses before the light wave from Tien's solar flare could blind him, which should confidently place his and Tien's speed in the faster than light ranges, and the others at relativistic to light speed ranges. If you don't buy this feat being FTL, there are a plethora of relativistic to light speed feats in OG Dragon Ball, even in the absence of this feat, whether that be the reaction to lasers, power poles, and Kamehameha Kamehameha waves that both respectively reached the moon in seconds. Feats all performed by significantly weaker and as a result slower versions of these characters. So it's pretty obvious that the solar flare feat isn't the only thing that gives credence to Goku and Tien being FTL pre-time skip. So by the end of OG, Chaozu's the weakest of the bunch since he's 22nd World Tournament Krillin level, followed by Roshi, Yamcha, Krillin, and Tien, who should be in the moon to possibly small planetary level ranges with FTL speeds, while Goku would comfortably be placed over these values by a few times since he is the strongest. Scaling the OG top tiers of the Golden Age, such as Superman, Wonder Woman, and Alan Scott, is easy this time around. Even this early in their histories, before some of them received their Silver Age and Crisis on Infinite Earth stimulus checks, these characters have displayed many feats that would make them beyond planetary level threats at a minimum. We see heroes like Superman destroy entire planet-sized bodies that were stated on one occasion to be an exact replica of Earth, down to its very landmarks, a feat in where Superman would have exerted at least 10 to the 32 joules of energy, or planet-busting energy in his strikes, but can be bumped up a little higher since he pulverizes counterfeit Earth to dust. This feat isn't really an outlier since it's accompanied by several more that dwarf the magnitude of it over tenfold, such as Superman's casual creation of a little star forged through the smashing of moons, which is a small star level feat, and his extinguishing of a star, another, spoiler, star level feat. While we're still on the topic of star level feats, Wonder Woman, a consensus top dog of the Justice Society of America, is no stranger to having this level of AP as well. Outside of her obvious relativity to Superman, she was shown capable of lassoing and pulling the entire mass of our solar body, which constitutes her being placed at this range since she prevailed in a cosmic tug of war against the forces of gravity created by the sun. The Starheart powered Green Lantern of this era, Alan Scott, would be in that star level range with these characters, while arguably being stronger, since he's pretty commonly referred to as one of, if not the strongest hero of this generation, while serving as a standard of power as one of the founding members of the Justice Society of America, since Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman were only honorary members. Dr. Fate is likely the strongest of this era, at least one pertaining to magical prowess, since the Nabu-controlled Kent Nelson is the strongest agent of the Lords of Order. When it comes to magic, he's that guy. He's been shown altering reality on much higher scales than even Alan Scott, who's more of a magic user than an actual Green Lantern at this point. Moving on to the next in this grand hierarchy, we have arguably the fastest character of this era in Jay Garrick's Flash, who was consistently shown in the 4th issue of the 1940 All-Star comic, keeping up with and even outpacing Dr. Fate and Alan Scott, while fighting alongside them. Furthermore, there are also a plethora of statements that outright imply that his speed is just completely unrivaled, which in conjunction with other scans that place his baseline speeds at FTL+, puts him right below the heavy hitters of the league, since he doesn't pack as much as a punch, but can stand on a somewhat equal footing as the other members. After Jay Garrick, we have the weakest of the bunch in Batman, who at this point isn't the prep god we would all come to know him as. He's pretty inconsequential to the outcome of this fight when it comes to his AP and gadgets, but is still one of the better minds and strategists of the time, so he'll be included anyways. Now that we got past the general AP range of this era, when it comes to speed, this era is pretty confidently FTL+ to massively FTL. Superman was able to clear the distance of our sun to Neptune nearly 2 times over while flying to planet X in a matter of 5 seconds, making him around 5,370 times faster than light, since it takes light from the sun around 4 hours to reach the planet Neptune, which is literally 2.8 billion miles of distance covered, whereas Superman covered around 5 billion miles. This would in turn piggyback scale Wonder Woman, Alan Scott, and Dr. Fate to these ranges, while Jay Garrick would be unquantifiably faster. So after concluding the rundown of both eras, we can finally pit them against each other. I feel when evaluating this match, it's pretty clear that the Golden Age's JSA completely outclasses the Dragon Team in physical stats. Superman and the top tiers are at a bare minimum thousands of times faster than them due to their blatant MFTL scaling compared to Goku and company's low FTL speeds. They can pack more of a punch in their attacks since the baseline entry level for this squad is planetary to star level. Just for the sake of comparison, Superman's feat of creating a small star was 327 billion times more impressive than the lower end calc for Roshi's moon feat, and a much tamer 374 million times difference if we use the higher end interpretation of Roshi's feat. So even if we're factoring Goku's training gains from Kami, and him just naturally growing multiple times stronger, he just can't close the distance. It's a speed blitz to one shot nonetheless, making the JSA the winner of the first round. When starting the next round with the most known era of Dragon Ball, that being the Z era, we have all the Z fighters soundly making the leap above the level of the Golden Age fairly quickly. When faced with the prospect of the android's attack, Piccolo told the group to stay home if they couldn't deal with threats greater than Frieza, who in just his first form could nuke planet Vegeta, a red planet with 2 suns like it was nothing, which has been calced to 29 foe or solar system level, and he could stack 3 transformations that far surpassed the former on top of this world-breaking power, putting him in the multi-solar system ranges, which served as the standard of power Piccolo wanted everyone everyone to surpass, which will scale a lot of the Z fighters that did show up after the 3 years of training above this. We then see the strongest of the group, that being Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, Trunks, and Gohan, all get bodied by an android or bio-android in some way, shape, or form, and train or fuse to take turns surpassing each other, such as Piccolo with his Kami Fusion Amp, Vegeta with Beyond Super Saiyan, Trunks with Ultra Super Saiyan, Goku with his Mastered Super Saiyan form, and Gohan with Super Saiyan 2, which allowed Gohan to fight and erase the stated solar system and universal level threatened Cell, who possessed infinite power, which would at least get Super Perfect Cell to that galaxy tier of power, since that level of destructive capability would be required to even phase the Dragon Ball universe, which is stated to be infinite. After Cell, we see Goku and Vegeta vastly surpass the power exhibited by Gohan during the Cell games. Goku and Base could fight against Pikkon, who while holding back could one-shot Super Perfect Cell casually, and Vegeta, after his Majin Amp, could go to blows with Super Saiyan 2 Goku, who would be over 100 times stronger than Super Perfect Cell through his form's multiplier. So they're both multi-galaxy level, and Goku with Super Saiyan 3 would be at a higher end of this. After this, we just have to follow a simple line of chain scaling. Goku throughout the Buu saga could fight and kill Fat Buu and Super Saiyan 3, who had the power to bully a multi-galaxy level threat into Bora. Through their power-ups, Gotenks surpassed the beginning of Buu Saga Goku and Majin Buu in base, and eventually surpasses in fights with Super Buu, who added on Fat Buu's power on top of his own and vice shouted out of the infinite time chamber. This officially marks the point these characters enter universal tiers through just how massive of an amp the fusion grants, since it was stated that a being created through it is way greater than just the sum of their individual parts, implying that Goten and Trunks' pre-potential unleashed Gohan level powers weren't only added together but were also multiplied by several times on top of that. This completely falls in line with how the fusion dance was perceived during the era of Z. It was mostly described in the anime as being an inferior means of fusion compared to the earrings, but as we know in hindsight, this has been retconned to a degree in modern times with Gogeta and Vegito. So if you want something that's more in line with that, there are also story guides from back then that state that the fusion dance, similarly to the Potara, is straight up the multiplication of the two powers. So if we're adhering to the older continuity, base Gotenks would be baseline universal, and with his 400 times Super Saiyan 3 multiplier, he'd be low multiversal. If these values seem like they're crazy and just an absurd jump, Super Buu, after absorbing and adding on the power of Gohan and Gotenks, was literally going to unwind the fabric of space-time and collapse multiple dimensions onto the universe from a simple vice shout, which the Daizenshuu says is performed through the charging of ki. He went from being able to shout out of the time chamber to being able to crush the entirety of existence post-absorption. Potential unleashed Gohan would then come into the scene, and both statements and feats that place him above everyone. He pretty easily surpassed Gotenks and could have killed Super Buu at any point in their fight, but fumbled the bag, which led to the strongest character in Z having to show up and pick up after his slap. Vegito at any point could have one-shot Buuhan, even after he focused and controlled his vice shout power, but needed to bait Buu into pulling his absorption card so he could save everyone. At the very end of the arc, Goku and Vegeta both eventually grow in power and reach some of these heights after defusing from Vegito, shown through them going to blows against perfect copies of Gohan and Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks while only in Super Saiyan 2. In addition, they also fought against the purest form of evil and chaos in Kid Buu, who has many countless statements among statements that state that he could destroy the infinite-sized universe. And a weakened Goku could still clash with him and was stated to be capable of beating him at full power. So pretty much every notable character is Universal Plus or low multiversal. For their speeds, Goku and Vegeta were able to react to Kid Buu and his ki attacks, something that Goku stated could make the entirety of the universe poof away in an instant. For him to even destroy an infinite universe in any time frame, let alone instantly, would have to require infinite speeds. The Silver Age is where DC's scaling gets really crazy, which is mostly highlighted through the Man of Steel, who in his earlier days could casually destroy an entire solar system with a mere sneeze, endure the gravitational pull of multiple galaxies, and tussle with characters such as Maldor, who could create entire universal-sized constructs. These almost comical feats would very quickly be superseded by his feat of taking the entire infinite energy of a Big Bang, and destroying a pyramid of time that can endure these energies. This is especially impressive when one considers the sheer size of the reality our heroes lived in, which wasn't as impressive as it is in modern times, but still had statements of being infinite or 4D in sheer size, making an earlier Silver Age Superman low multiversal, a gauge of AP that would trickle over to the Martian Manhunter, who in World's Finest issue 212 stalemated and drew blood from Superman in their fight, and even forced Superman to concede to the claims that Martian Manhunter can punch as hard as him. Wonder Woman would be right under the Red Sun, since she not only scrapped with the rival of Superman in Supergirl, but has statements that directly compare her to Superman. Early on, Hal and Barry very quickly showed that they could give powerhouses like Superman some problems through their respective kits and abilities, but still ultimately lost to him. I left out Golden Age Aquaman since he was quite frankly very underwhelming, but at this point, pre-Crisis Aquaman would be relative to the mid-tier members, just very clearly weaker than them, since he lacks statements and feats that directly scale him to or above the big three. Batman by this point, with or without prep, has shown the ability to casually counter Superman level threats with his standard gear, whether that be explosive batarangs, pellets, or other gadgets in his utility belt. So Batman by the 60s can somewhat react to these levels of speed and endure the brunt of these attacks when paired with the League. Moving on, we see these massive displays of power get cliffed through the advent of Crisis on Infinite Earths, where we would see the Anti-Monitor cast his presence as the greatest threat over the entirety of DC's multiverse. Throughout the story, we see his power fluctuate as he needs to consume positive matter to expand his infinite multiverse size, the antimatter universe. But in spite of that, even at his weakest, he still threatened and wiped an infinite amount of universes to nearly nil, scaling him above the unofficial Ori of Worlds at the time, which due to Chrono's actions, now housed an infinite amount of universes that branched off of each other down to any quantum transition via the many worlds interpretation, which would make the amount of universes in pre-Crisis' DC unquantifiably infinite or low complex multiversal. But in all actuality, his fully powered Crisis on Infinite Earths self would advance far beyond these values, since he's detailed by guides to be as strong as his post-Flashpoint self, who threatened all of reality and clashed with a stronger than ever at the time Darkseid. This isn't a stretch since pre-Crisis Darkseid himself confirmed to us that the Anti-Monitor's power can even reach and destroy beings that lie in the sphere of the gods, an abstract realm of living ideals that stated many times to transcend the concept of space and dimensionality in its entirety, making it the textbook definition of an outerversal realm, since it would be Aleph 1 or an inaccessible cardinal, and beyond transcend things like countable infinities and every facet of material existence, while holding multiple low outer metaphysical realms such as heaven and hell. And true Darkseid literally hid Apocalypse behind his cloak and ducked the Anti-Monitor. This, in course with the Anti-Monitor's fight against Darkseid and the Spectre, would scale him to the low outer ranges at his peak, a scale of power that's important to note due to the events of the Crisis, wherein many of the pre-Crisis JLA members clashed against the unbridled might of Dax Nobu. So to sum it up, if the Anti-Monitor's efforts weren't thwarted, at best he'd have the power to threaten low outer characters in the sphere of the gods, and at worst, he boasts infinite dimensional levels of energy, making him high hyperversal, which would in turn scale the top tiers of the JLA to high hyperversal to low outer with immeasurable to irrelevant speeds, since they could all react to Superman and the Flash, who could both travel back or forward in time with their sheer speed, break through the bonds of infinity, and react to the Anti-Monitor in his attacks. With the closing of this section, the Z Fighters have virtually no win con. Even with the hypothetical Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta, or theoretical Gogeta, they still be many infinities below this era of the JLA in strength. The only way we could really have a match is if you argued that Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, and Gotenks have hyperversal AP or above, which can only be done if you irrationally believe that Kid Buu can wipe the afterlife in one shot, or Buhan can beyond infinitely surpass his dimension collapsing Vice Shout. Additionally, the Z Fighters are not only much slower, which is a nice way of putting it since the speed gap is immeasurably higher than the strength gap, but lack the necessary hacks to do anything about this speed and strength disparity, since the effectiveness of their abilities falter in the presence of a greater power. I mean, we're talking about a reality warping Kryptonian and Speedster, backed by a Green Lantern whose mind is his only limit, Martian Manhunter whose mind hacks can literally make them attack each other, an uber skilled Aquaman, Wonder Woman who could both tussle with Superman level threats, and Batman whose gear can injure, prohibit, and defend against beings as strong as the earlier versions of his contemporaries, ending yet another round in a convincing victory for DC's team. Within the beginning portion of GT, we see how much stronger Goku got in his fight against General Roldo, a character stated to be stronger than any threat they've ever faced, even Buu. Meaning that Roldo at the very least would have to exceed Kid Buu, or Buhan, depending on who you think is stronger. Right after making such a remark, Goku was able to fight on par with this low multiversal, beyond Buu power and base, and should at this point be reaching beyond the power of Buu Arc Vegito, since base Vegito was extremely relative to Buhan and would be around 50 times stronger in his Super Saiyan form. Not at the earliest baseline for GT Goku has been defined, the elephant in the room for this round still remains. Do the Z Fighters ever reach the strength and or speed tiers of the Silver Age's Justice League? After this scuffle, we get a massive jump in GT's meta from his three main villains, who pretty easily skyrocketed GT into these ranges. If it wasn't obvious already, I'm talking about Baby, Super 17, and Omega Shenron. Starting with Baby, after using a twisted version of Goku's Spirit Bomb that transformed into a form similar to Super Saiyan 3, Baby grew so much in power that his Revenge Death Ball could cross over and devastate subspace, a realm that's located between inaccessible areas of the cosmology that can only be accessed through things like instant transmission and the Kai Kai technique. For Baby Vegeta to even perform perform a feat of such magnitude, he would have had to have completed one of the prerequisites of having outerversal AP, since this realm is stated to lack the concepts of space and time. Why Goku would scale above this doesn't need much explaining. He far surpassed this horizon of power and dominated baby Vegeta with Super Saiyan 4. I've seen many people try to disingenuously argue that Super Saiyan 4 Goku is weaker than or relative to Borak Vegito due to GT Perfect File stating that Vegito might be stronger than a Super Saiyan 4. But ironically enough, the guide implies the exact opposite, and questions if the multiplier Goku and Vegeta received from the Potara in the Buu arc is as strong as the Super Saiyan 4 multiplier. It didn't specify Super Saiyan 4 Goku, Vegeta, or Gogeta, only a Super Saiyan 4, which leads me to believe that they're referring to the transformation and not an individual character. So it's very plausible that a Super Saiyan 4 amp is greater than, or at the very least relative to, a Buu Saga Potara amp, so around 900 quintillion times at an extreme low ball, if we just use these characters' power levels from the Frieza Saga. After beating down a Golden Ozaru baby who's at least 500 times stronger than Super Baby, Goku and the Z Fighters would encounter the two ultimate team busters in GT, Super 17 and Omega Shenron. Super 17 was presented as a larger threat than Baby, and pretty easily dealt with the strongest of the bunch such as Gohan, Majub, and Vegeta, who outperformed the Super Baby 2 level Majub and ended up as the last one standing against Super 17. After Vegeta was dealt with, Goku showed up to the battlefield and pretty easily ragdolled a threat of this caliber across the earth, before forcing him to overcharge with his Super Saiyan 4 power, resulting in an opening that Goku took advantage of to put him down. It's at this point each of the prominent members of the Z Fighters should be low outer, since they should be in the ballpark if not outright stronger than Baby Vegeta due to relativity to Oob, who was a rival to Super Baby 2 in the prior arc. A value of power that would soon find itself being dwarfed by the strongest Shadow Dragon, Yijing Long or Omega Shenron, who could unceremoniously toss around two Super Saiyan 4s and passively destroy the entire macrocosm with his mere aura. But a threat this great warranted an equal and greater response in Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, who was strong enough to Perception Blitz, toy around with, and overpower Omega Shenron's cosmology wiping negative energy. Just to quickly go over their speed, they would fall into the irrelevant tier since both Omega and Baby Vegeta could nuke a realm beyond the concept of space, i.e. subspace and the afterlife with their key attacks and negative energy, attacks that all of the high tiers can react to. Post-Crisis DC doesn't reach the same or greater tiers of power that their pre-Crisis selves showed until the onset of Infinite Crisis and Superboy Prime. As I detailed in my prior video, Superboy Prime fought with and showcased relativity to Silver Age Superman during the first Crisis, and likely surpassed him in the Infinite Crisis secret files after receiving an amp from Alexander Luthor that made him think he was unstoppable, which allowed him to rupture and retcon the entire narratives that lied into Ori of Worlds, and those saw attacks from top tiers such as Wally amped by the entirety of the Speed Force, a force that not only dictates all movement within DC, but also houses the 5th dimensional Ori of Worlds and infinite higher dimensions of space as well. Superboy not only bared the brunt of his high hyperversal energies from the hand of the Flash, but also broke out of the Speed Force later in the story. This line of scaling would follow post-Crisis Superman, who could injure and endure a beatdown by the hands of his Prime variant, and every one of the superpowered core of JLA members who scaled as Superman or oppressed Superboy Prime, like Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Hal. Anyways, we see the peak powers of this Superman in the comic Death of the New Gods, who was able to damage Soulfire Darkseid amped to the nth degree through absorbing the essence of hundreds of thousands of new and old gods with his Soulfire formula. Soulfire Darkseid posed such a threat to reality that the Source literally had to step in and stop him from laying waste to beings in the Spear of the Gods and everything below it. I think I already made it clear how and why the archetypal God Spear scales to low outer, especially now, so Superman tagging and surviving attacks from an amped being that already scaled to that plane would scale him to these levels as well. So right before the events of Final Crisis, any of the Leaguers that still scaled as Superman should be low outer at this point, with their speeds being in the region of their pre-Crisis selves due to their relativity to Superboy Prime, so irrelevant. This battle completely flips the script of this video, and would go completely differently. Both squads have low outer scaling, irrelevant speeds, and an array of hacks that can work on each other. But I think the determining X factor for the outcome of this fight would be Super Saiyan 4. While you can't argue that the JLA could start this battle off hot and give the GT era Z Fighters problems, both Goku and Vegeta can stack up a tower level fusion on top of their base outer powers to really shake up this fight. On top of Gohan, Goten, and Trunks' SSJ2 multipliers, which would increase their powers 100-fold. It's a dangerous game when determining which group would be stronger, since they're both in low outer versal range, which in itself has an extremely large ceiling, infinite to be exact. But my logic goes as follows. Superman didn't really scale to a fully powered Soulfire Darkseid because Darkseid himself couldn't even access the full power of the Soulfire formula, and was busy adjusting to this newfound power on the fly, as per his own words. Besides, Infinity Man, or the source that Soulfire Darkseid did fight, wasn't the presence and was only a mere aspect of a tool he uses, limited by the comprehension of everyone present. With GT's cast, they can tank attacks from Omega Shenron, who's mere presence scales above low outer fighters like Hellfighter 17, Super Baby 2, and Super 17. Now, the hacks of the JLA could definitely make a difference, but I feel like a few of these are a bit offsetted by the fact that since they might be stronger, they can just neg or at least resist many of the hacks that the JLA members possess. Now, if at any point they allow Superman to pull out a sun dip, things would legitimately get ugly. All Superman needs is a few moments in there and he can rise to the occasion. But in response to this, Goku and Vegeta could very quickly sense his power increasing, and pull out the fusion dance to fuse into Gogeta, astronomically increasing their power to the point where they can combat him, which is in character for Vegeta to do at this point. When factoring all of this in, it's very contentious and either group can win, but I put my money on an extreme high diff win for GT, assuming they play their cards right and get the job done. With the score now being 2-1, let's get right into the final round. After the events of Darkseid War and his battle with Rao, Post-Crisis Superman undid the actions of Dr. Manhattan in Superman Reborn, and became whole again through his merging with his new 52 counterpart, known to all as Rebirth Superman. Early on in 2018, Superman stated that he's stronger than he's ever been in both body and mind, which would upscale him from Post-Crisis Superman since every DC character now has the memories of their stories throughout all of time. To really get this growth and power across, there's really only one feat I need to reference for Rebirth Superman, which is his one-shotting of the World Forger, the brother of the Anti-Monitor who resides within the stated all-transcending 6th dimension, meaning that the control room of the multiverse would transcend the God Spear, the realm of imagination or Limbo, which serves as a limit for things like memory within the multiverse, far surpass the Monitor Spear, which makes Limbo look like a video game disc, the 5th dimension or the realm of imagination, and the former Source Wall, making it 5 completely transcending infinities above. Mind you, within DC, dimensional hierarchies are taken very seriously. A being in a plane above can more times than not completely nuke everything under them, and even their own plane in certain instances. Case in point, True Darkseid's fall threatening the multiverse, or Mr. Mixie wiping everything in his fight with Batmite. Now, although Superman was sun-dipped and amped with his Beyond World Forger punch, even without this amp, the World Forger still believed that Superman would be a massive threat to his plan. It's literally the reason why he had him locked in the 6th dimension in the first place. This would upscale Superman and his bandmate of Leaguers to high outer versal, since in Dark Knight's Death Metal, they survived fighting against Barbados, who put the World Forger in a body bag. Succeeding these events are many displays of combat against many notable characters who fit the criteria of scaling above the World Forger or being able to perceive and etch their names into the overvoid, like Perpetua, the Darkest Knight, Dark Crisis Darkseid, and Empty Hand. By the Infinite Frontiers era, Perpetua and the Darkest Knight would get clipped through the reintroduction of True Darkseid, who merged with his prior selves, pushing him to the heights of fodderizing the highest order of power in the Quintessence and receiving compliments while being able to harm the right hand of the Great Darkness, the Empty Hand, who scale above the Crisis Energy merchant Perpetua due to his strong connection to the Presence's greatest threat. In Dark Crisis, Superman and, I kid you not, the entire Justice League of old, new, and different fought against this dark side amped by the Great Darkness. Motioning onwards into Heroes, the Dragon Ball Multiverse enters the domain of being a layer or many layers into outer through the entry of the Time Nest, which views the entirety of Dragon Ball as history contained in scrolls within the Time Vault, and the Crack of Time, which holds an infinite amount of Dragon Ball histories, two realms that would transcend subspace. Just Xeno Goku transforming into Super Saiyan 4 threatened to annihilate these planes beyond existence, so this would propel him, Super Saiyan Blue CC Goku, both Vegetas, and everyone else to these scales of strength. Since CC Goku, even before the events of Heroes in Dragon Ball Super, could destroy the entire macrocosm including subspace while in his Super Saiyan God form, making him outer versal before the events of Heroes. Power he then adds on to his base and can multiply with multiple Potara level amps while growing hundreds of thousands of times stronger through the events of Goku Black, TOP, and Broly collectively. When trying to push the boundaries to see if they can reach the higher layers of outer at their best, the fictionally transcendent world of Beat that views the entirety of Dragon Ball as a fictional video game is one way of doing this, since we see these characters exhibit the power to either A, wipe out Beat's home completely, B, affect the Charisma world, or C, scale to others who can do so, like Demigra, Fu, and numerous others, thus making Xeno, Trunks, Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, and their CC counterparts 4 layers into outer. Extremely powerful, yes, but still a layer of infinity below DC. There's really no other higher layers of existence past this, so there's really no way to compensate for this fact, even if you played a conceptually boundless game, which the same can be done for with DC due to the Overvoid, which I didn't even touch on. For their speed or lack thereof, since they conceptually supersede it, they would be at higher ends of irrelevant speed than their earlier versions. So both have similar speeds, but there's very clearly a one-shot level difference in power in favor of DC. So this round will pretty much be a cosmic game of tag, as the hero squad tries to play keep away from 7 characters who in some way, shape, or form can hurt someone as strong as their leader. Dragon Ball is strong, but DC is just way stronger, something I hope I got across with this video in some way or another.